we shall begin. So welcome. Hi. Happy Halloween. Like I said, is anyone dressing up as anything fun today? No, not yet. I
Yes.
handmade.
So I'm
Yes.
dressed as
Go, Jenny.
Western
Tell me.
Barbie.
You're
Western
cool.
Barbie.
I love it. My one of my dear friends dressed up as the Ken version where he's like wearing the big mink coat and has like the fanny pack that says Ken. He's like kind of like emo vibe almost. It was excellent. Yes, well, great. If you're dressing up, awesome. And if not, awesome too. I'm not much of a dress up human, but I did get a really fun light up pumpkin necklace. So there we go. I definitely ate my fair share of Halloween candy, however, so that's good. So today we're going to talk about how to plan and pull off a workshop or webinar. And we're looking at this topic specifically through the lens of if you don't necessarily have a big audience yet, right? You don't have, oh, excellent. Did we just love it, Bar? I'm like, wait, what is that thing on your head? Awesome.
Distraction. I'll turn it off.
No, I love it. I love it. It made me smile. Yes, filters are welcome, right? And so we'll be talking about how to like plan and put together a workshop or webinar, and I'll distinguish between the two. I've got some examples of both for you here, but we're really looking through this topic more specifically through the lens of like, how do you do this if you don't have like a huge Instagram following or thousands of people on your email list? How do we still get the word out? How do we still like make these workshops successful and fun for you to host? So a little overview of our agenda today, what we'll be working on. I like to get to know you, and when I get to know you, it helps me kind of tailor this content to be more specific to you. So anything you're feeling is relevant to bring to the table to share with the group today is awesome and welcome. We'll talk a little bit about what our goals are with these workshops. So I think it's really helpful going into any new endeavor, getting really clear on like, what is it we actually want to see happen as a result of this work. We'll talk a little bit about the two types of humans out in the world that we may be trying to reach. And then my hope is, as with all of my workshops, to give you some actual workshop time to draft out an outline of a potential workshop you're interested in hosting coming up. So we'll work on that and get some feedback for you live right here. And then we'll talk about 4 different ways we can get folks to that workshop that might be helpful to you. And 2 of those are specifically if you have no online presence. And that's you're not interested in having an online presence or you just don't have one yet. And then we'll talk about a couple next steps. I've got some really fun workshops and opportunities coming up this fall that I want to make sure you're aware of before we leave. Awesome. All right, so I'd love to learn a little bit about you. We do have a small enough group that if you want to just unmute yourself and introduce yourself, you can go, feel free. But if you prefer to type, you can do that in the chat box. And we'll just take a couple of minutes here to get to know everybody. So feel free to take it away. And if you're chewing, feel free to continue chewing.
I'm Burr. Hi.
Hi, Burr.
Hi. I am training in a healing modality and will be certified, well, sometime within the next year, probably, hopefully.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's exciting. And all of my training has been online.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to having in-person as well as virtual clients. Real people, virtual, I should say.
Real human beings.
Real people, not AI. And I will have a website. That's the plan.
Great.
But I'm not a social media person at all.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm starting out.
Cool. Awesome. Anything specific you're excited to learn about today, Burr?
Oh, well, yeah, definitely how to reach people. And the nice part about this training too is that it's really thorough and they give us an outline of how to do, like basically a script of workshops that we can modify for ourselves. But I'm also curious. I just want input about like what other people are doing.
Yeah. So, I love that. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm going to give you the whole, the
Give
whole,
us the whole
yes, I'm
effect.
here,
We love it, Jenny.
Western Barbie today. Um, so I'm Jenny, and let me give you my 30-second spiel, right? So
Yeah.
I've had a very successful career in healthcare finance,
Cool.
and about 8 years ago, my career path was interrupted when I had a difficult diagnosis.
Hmm.
And so I am a survivor of ovarian cancer.
Wow.
And I've been in training for this past year to become a professional coach. So
Hmm.
my work is fulfilling, and I know that there's more for me to do, and I feel,
Totally.
called to do more. And so, um, as life would have it, um, I'm in the process of losing my job at the
Hmm.
same time I'm going through this training. So I think it's like
Wow.
life throwing me another challenge.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure it out. Right at the very beginning of things. So I'm grateful to have the
Yeah.
help. Um, yeah, so a year ago, I was expecting to get this coaching certification, but I wasn't expecting to lose my job. But
Yeah.
here I am. So I'm trying to figure out like, what's the gift here? What's the opportunity
Hmm.
for me? And try to roll with it that way and see it in a positive light. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you're here to help me to see it in a positive light and make
Hmm.
things happen for myself. And so the coach program, I would say, similar to the other participant, I have some materials that I can
Hmm.
use to
Hmm.
present webinars.
Yep.
And I think it's really good content, but I definitely don't have an audience yet.
Yep.
And, so trying to figure all of that out. And if you have tips on forming a website, or like what you
Hmm.
think like the best tools are for forming a website and for,
Yeah.
collecting payments through a website, I'd love to
Hmm.
get that information too. So
Okay.
thank you so
Sure.
much for the
Yeah.
offering.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. And thanks honestly for yeah, just like modeling resilience. Like that's huge. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I will say honestly that my experience going through my healthcare crisis taught me a lot. And
yeah.
one of the things, maybe the biggest lesson that it taught me is that, um, well, I guess I'm going to say two things. So one is that I really want to experience joy in my life, that is incredibly important to
Yeah.
me. And that I realize no matter what is happening in my life, I can be experiencing joy, and I can be intentional about experiencing joy and bringing joy to other people too. So that's
Mhm.
one thing. The other thing that really became sort of crystal clear to me is that I want to present myself in a more authentic way
Mm,
every day. And so
mm,
I would say that for a lot of my professional career, and I actually blogged about this recently for my professional association, I stuffed down a lot of the sparkle that you see in my
mm,
personality because I was
mm.
trying to fit in a very
Yeah.
conservative profession.
Be
And
professional. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I find that life is a lot more fulfilling and fun for me if I get to show up like who I really am and
Yeah.
take that filter off.
Yeah. I
So,
love
so
that.
that
Thank
too.
you. I think everyone is like smiling and nodding.
Oh, okay. I can't
So
see
yeah,
everybody.
so that is 100% resonating.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So you
Thanks for
guys are my
sharing.
audience then.
There you go. Welcome,
Thank
Rebecca.
you.
We're just doing some introductions, getting to know everybody. Naraya or Catherine? Yeah, Naraya, go.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Naraya. I'm a career and leadership coach. Excuse me. I think I'm here today, one, because I love Emily, and
Love you too.
two, because she's so great. And two, I do a fair number of webinars. I'm thinking about
Mm,
some different formats going forward. Maybe thinking about running a group program that would regularly meet in this sort of fashion. And I actually am really thinking about generating new leads through
mm,
webinars in particular.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
that's probably the
Okay.
biggest thing that I'm like really trying to think about. And especially not really using social media typically.
Yep.
how I could use my newsletter list and webinars to generate
Mhm.
some new interest.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And to give some context, that's actually where this this workshop topic, how and it's like so meta. It's like we're doing a workshop on how to do a workshop, but that's where this actually came from. Was the previous workshop I hosted for CWE was on marketing without social media, and one of the 5 strategies I presented was workshops, and like using workshops instead of social media to generate new leads and to grow an audience. And then everybody was like, well, how do I do a workshop? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's do that next. So totally get that. And can I just ask Naraya a clarifying question? When you said generating leads through webinars, are you picturing in your head that those webinars are like presenting an offer, like a specific service, or was it more of like, are you thinking more in your head of a kind of more of an organic flow? Like, for instance, these workshops I host through CWE, there's no hard sales. So like, I'm never actively asking you to sign up and do something with me. But then there are others, and that's where I think the workshop versus webinar kind of differentiates a little bit, where the webinar is like, y'all are here to hear about an offer. I'm also going to teach you some things, but you're really here to like hear about an opportunity to work with me. Do you have an idea of like, between those two?
I would say more like this. So more like I'm offering you content and some value here. And my hope is that in doing so, you will continue, you will like hit subscribe or come to some other things or contact me to be interested in some other offers.
That's helpful, because we can talk a little bit about, and just remind me if I don't, actually, there is a slide about it. I'm just going to take a note here, because there's something very specific and strategic we can do in workshops and webinars that hopefully just becomes intuitive and like normal to do. But in the beginning, I find it's helpful to like be very specific and purposeful with this strategy that can lead to that effect happening naturally, versus you having to kind of like make that hard ask, which I think for a lot of us feels better kind of just intuitively. Yeah. Okay, cool. Catherine, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I own a tutoring business, and
Cool.
In December I'm launching my first group classes, which is
Woohoo!
really
Congrats.
kind of nervous because I don't really have a social media presence. I'm launching it through networking convention, so that should get me kind of hopefully mostly to some of the classes being filled, but it's just a matter of having the group classes actually leads to people possibly doing one-on-one classes.
Totally.
And therefore it makes a lot more sense. But eventually I want to kind of get more into workshopping too. I've been focusing more on classes, and so it just seems like this timing is really good for me, and that I can use parts of it now, parts of it later, and kind of figure out how to build my business a little bit more organically, as I'm kind of moving from just one-on-one, me being solopreneur, to trying to get more of a business model, because in tutoring the problem becomes that if you don't expand beyond the solopreneur, it gets to be kind of a problem of financial aid.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours, and you can kind of, there's a quick ceiling to meet on how much you can charge for those hours. And
and I work with kids, so 3 p.m. to
exactly
8 p.m. is Monday through Thursday is kind of the limit.
Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. Anything specific you're really hoping to walk away with today?
Concrete ideas on how to continue to market after the convention.
Okay.
And what I can be doing like every single day to hopefully get more students.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. And Rebecca, I wanted to just give you an opportunity. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you? totally cool if you're not in a place. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah, I'm kind of like going lots of things. That's why I have my camera turned on. So I
No
apologize.
worries.
Yeah. So I'm Rebecca. I am a life coach. And I am just launched in August, so very beginning of the process of my business. And I'm very here for similar ideas as Naraya, where I'm looking to start doing like a webinar in order to try and generate more leads, providing content on a group basis, where in the hopes that individuals would want a more personalized service from me.
Okay, cool. Anything specific come to mind when you think about what you'd really like to learn today?
Nothing specific.
Okay.
A lot of what the others mentioned
Cool.
is what I'm looking for, so it'd be perfect.
Awesome. All right. Sweet. Awesome. All right. A little bit about me. I know some of you, but some of you are new to me. So obviously I'm Emily. I am an anti-capitalist business advisor. So I work with small business owners, both locally in Vermont, but also nationally. And hold on, I'm going to let someone in. We got someone joining us. I also do a lot of public speaking. My happy place is like standing on a stage, talking in front of hundreds of humans, or holding power tools and being by myself. It kind of vacillates from one side to the other. My most recent endeavor, I've been learning to become a carpenter, which has been really fun. And I just love entrepreneurship because it affords us this space to keep reimagining like what we're doing and who we're serving and how we want to show up and what we're interested in. I love that flexibility, and I like supporting other folks figuring that out. And I think if we build a really solid skeleton for our business, it gives us this flexibility to venture out and try different things, because at the end of the day, the foundation's the same, and those skills are the same. And so we can kind of keep reinventing ourselves as the years go on and trying different things. I'm also a mom. These are my 2 kiddos and my partner. And so I often talk a lot about how caregiving interweaves with business. And I use caregiving as like a broad term, whether that's children, elder care, partners, community care, anything in between. Most of us are more than like just our business. And I think it's important to make space for that. So I love talking about that too. And then oftentimes, the term anti-capitalist is new for a lot of folks. And so I like to just touch on that before I dive in so that doesn't feel confusing. Sometimes folks are like, anti-capitalist, does that mean you don't believe in making money? And that's not really what anti-capitalism is about. It's really looking at how do we get our personal needs met, the needs of our family, the needs of our community met, without exploitation, right? How do we get all of our needs met without other people being at a loss, right? And then getting curious about who's getting included in these conversations and who isn't, and asking those questions of why, right? Like why are some of us getting access and some aren't, and really orienting our businesses and our relationships towards, a more humane, collective, and balanced future is what I'm looking at. And so I love to start all of these workshops off with these 4 questions. These come from Kate Tyson. Kate is actually a bookkeeper, which is pretty cool. She is based out of Philadelphia. She has a practice called Wander Well is her business. And she wrote an article about anti-capitalism and business. And these are 4 of the questions that she really strongly encourages us as business owners to consider whenever we're taking anything new on. Like this could be as big as like planning out 2024 for your business. And it could be as small as debating whether or not to take X client on that you just had a discovery call with, right? It can be really small and it can be really big. But I find that this is a helpful grounding place for us to think about, because often, and I think social media can really exacerbate this, there's this, this kind of like silver bullet phenomenon happening, right? Of like, there's so many different ideas and there's so many different people out there saying like, do this, no, go this way, no, try this. And like, as a business owner, we're like, bing, 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 bing. bouncing all over the place. And I find these questions are really grounding for me. It helps me kind of put blinders on when necessary and really focus on like, okay, those are all rad ideas and awesome if those ideas are serving you. And also like, where am I right now? Right. Like, so our first question here is like, where can your business best be in service? Right. And so I think sometimes I see this a lot with folks who identify as caregivers, folks who often identify as women. We want to help everyone all the time in all ways. And as wonderful as that is, it's A, impossible, and B, very tiring. And C, can often kind of like dilute our efforts. And to be honest, there are things like that you're not good at. And that's okay, right? Like that's actually a great thing because someone else is really good at them. And so, I like to come back to like, what am I uniquely qualified to do, right? What am I set up to do? And when I say I'm also asking like, what is my business set up to do, right? Like, where am I placed right now that makes sense for me to be entering this conversation or makes sense for me to be offering support? So I wanted to just pause there on question 1 and give folks, you can unmute yourself, you can throw it in the chat. What are some things that you feel qualified to help with right now? And awesome if it's kind of connected to this idea of workshops, but if it's not, that's okay too. Like it could be just a really broad, I know it's a big question, but just thinking about what types of people, communities, causes are you suited to support right now?
So I'm happy to share, Emily.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I think certainly cancer survivors,
Totally.
certainly people that are seeking a greater connection to their authenticity. Certainly people that are going through any sort of difficult transition. And then I would say also people that work in healthcare, maybe specifically healthcare finance, but people that work in healthcare.
Yeah.
So I think those are some areas that are sort of natural draws for me. And I think I have, like I said, I have I think just a natural propensity to want to foster people forward in their careers.
Yeah, I love that.
And I'm an environmental landscape designer.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, sorry to come in late.
No, you're good.
I'm delighted to see these 4 questions here. I can't tell you what a relief it is to have a little bit of guidance. So I have a lovely little business called Healthy Home Habitats where I entice and inspire and hopefully incite people to make different choices in their own home landscapes. 125 million acres, right? I really believe that we can have healthier communities, but I'm struggling because it's pretty much not-for-profit services. And so while I have an abundant knowledge of landscape architecture and of native plant communities and of finding reasonable ways to make these choices in our lives, I haven't figured out yet the best mode of offering these services in a way that I can still support my family, like you say, not be completely depleted. So yeah. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Michelle. Maybe one more.
So I have a lot of different areas where I can be uniquely helpful, which is kind of a huge problem for me right now. No, because I actually went to law school and I have a degree in international relations as well. And you put that into tutoring, and I work with a lot of people all over the world. I do ESL, but I also work with academics because I've been able to be successful at a high level. Traditionally I can, like when I worked for other companies, they gave me whoever they had the most challenge with. So I was even doing like medical English at one point, and that was really not my forte. But so my vision is, I understand people who are highly intelligent people learning English around the world and what their needs are. So offering something that is different from the rest of them. So I'm offering conversational business English classes as opposed to just traditional classes, because most business owners have a high level of grammar knowledge and all that. They don't have the option of communicating with other people. And I also offer for international students, I work with kids who are planning coming to the US for college and giving them a 3 package of the academic tutoring needed, but also the social transitioning and the transitioning between different cultures' expectations when it comes to English in classes, and also additional ESL support beyond when ESL tends to stop. So those are some niches that I'm currently working on.
Cool. I love it. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. All right, I'm going to move us to our second question here. So what do you have? And sometimes I love when people get surprised by this question. The resources that we have access to that are not necessarily so tangible, and not always, a lot of the time, it's kind of more lived experiences can be resources as well. And so, I'd love to see a couple things. Tell us a couple of things in the chat. If you'd like to unmute yourself, you can, but what are some of the things you have right now? What physical, intellectual, ancestral resources do you have or have access to that you feel like could support where your business could be best of service?
So I would say networking contacts is something that I have.
Yeah.
And something that I'm trying to be intentional about leveraging.
Cool. I love that. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a good non-totally tangible. Naraya said lived experience, past experience, coaching individuals and in organizations, research background. Ooh, I like that. Our third question is, what do you need? So what are your personal, business, and intimate family or community needs? What are you feeling like you really need to thrive right now? What's missing? What are you needing?
So I would say technology support is an area that I feel like I, probably need some support with.
Yep, totally. There was a point where that was a big need for me. Naraya, fewer decisions to be made. Yeah. Decision fatigue, maybe kind of narrowing scope or narrowing. I know for me, there have been points in my journey of business where I've really needed to actually listen to less people. Like, I need everyone else to go away. I need to just do what actually feels best to me, instead of because there are a lot of really smart humans out there doing amazing things. And I think especially in the online space, and if your business is online, it can be so easy to get wrapped up in that of oh no, this is the right way to do it, or this is the right way to do it. And that can we can get into that kind of analysis paralysis space. Yeah. Catherine, you said money, stability, peace, more personal relationships. Yeah, I love that. Rebecca, you said marketing support. Yep. And then last question here before we start to dive into this, the core of this content. What is your business set up to do now? I know for some folks, it can feel there's on the one hand, I think small business owners can be wonderfully optimistic, and they're like, I can do anything, I can build anything. And that is so exciting. And that drive is totally what's going to get you to wherever you want to be at one point. And also it's good to acknowledge, where are you right now, right? What are you actually capable of doing right now? And what are you not capable of doing yet, but would like to be? Or what are you not actually capable of doing at all ever? And we need to sunset that idea and make space for what you really want to be doing. I think sometimes we can get kind of caught in this space of well, I have, especially for folks that have a ton of industry knowledge, if you've been doing something for a long time, or you have multiple degrees backing up this thing, it can feel really hard to even play with the idea of stepping in another direction, because it's yeah, but I invested so much time and energy here. but maybe that's not the business anymore. And that's okay too, right? So just thinking about, what are you set up to do now? And what would you like to be set up to do down the road? Michelle, you shared, now you're set up for residential landscape consulting, public programs, and hands-on workshops. What you're not set up to do ever is able to wait for committee decisions that would be needed by shifting to be an NPO future. Okay. A teaching space for all ages. Is that what you're hoping to move towards?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't enter. So now, never, and
yeah.
future.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
future. I'd love to have a permanent space, or a space to be able to bring people of all ages to have hands-on workshops, learn all kinds of things about sustainable landscape maintenance and sustainable home management.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. I just took a weatherization course. And so I was learning a lot about like what it takes to make our, our homes like need to breathe, and they need to like be able to move. And yeah, so cool. Other folks, anything you want to share about what you're set up to do now versus what you maybe like to be set up to do in the future, or anything you're like, I want to let this go. I don't want to do this ever. And I'm taking today to proclaim that. Rebecca, you said take on new clients, workshops, podcasts, maybe speaking in the future. Yeah, I love that.
So
Catherine,
I would add that one thing I'm set up to do now is storytelling. I'm a pretty good storyteller, and I think stories are powerful. So
yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we get into our workshop. Catherine, you said set up now for intimate tutoring, highly personalized, limited to your schedule and your expertise, wanting to shift to convincing to provide the quality of service with more teachers, not interested in growing for money's sake, and only want to continue to provide same quality as you grow. And you want to be your services to be seen as equitable. Yeah, I love that. Cool. Awesome. Well, feel free to keep chiming in and adding some stuff here. I want to, I think I got from most of you in the beginning what you're really looking for in terms of help with this workshop. We heard a lot of stuff around, just kind of getting a better understanding of generating leads through this process of like using workshops and webinars to generate leads. I also heard some requests for, if we have some time at the end, Jenny, we can try and touch a little bit on website help, or I can also just kind of direct you to some folks that would be helpful with that. And then one thing I just wanted to highlight, I heard from Rebecca, was kind of like maybe a little bit more like daily marketing maintenance of like, how do I make this marketing idea a daily ritual versus like this one-time thing I do, and then I don't do anything. I don't talk to anybody for months, and then the list goes cold, and then I gotta do this heavy lift all over again. So, figuring out like, could workshops be a strategy for a more regular cadence of checking in with our people and creating content? Anything else y'all want to add to our goals for today? Anything else you're feeling like you want to walk away with? Does that feel good? Yeah. Okay. If you think of anything, feel free to throw it in there. And then before we dive into that, I'd love to just highlight how our strengths play a role in this. One of my biggest goals in business coaching is to teach strategies, but then teach you how to adapt those strategies to you, right? So you and I are not the same. We do not have the same lived experience. We do not have the same strengths. We do not have the same family makeup. We do not have the same business, right? And so if I simply tell you how I do something and expect you to go replicate it, most likely it's not going to work, right? At best, you'll figure out some pieces and those will, by chance work out for you. But my goal here is really to help you figure out, how do you show up best in your business? What's the most fun for you to do? And then how can we bend these strategies I'm sharing to fit your strengths, right? Versus the other way around. I don't want to bend you to fit the strategy. I want to bend the strategy to fit to you. And so part of that is, learning how to critically think and question and knowing yourself, right? And getting an understanding of who you are and how you show up best. So I always use this example of like, if I'm telling you email marketing is the best strategy to use for marketing and you hate writing, right? Like these aren't going to work well together. And so we need to figure out, okay, if email marketing is really important, how could we shift email marketing to be aligned for you, right? So maybe you show up on video in your emails, or maybe your emails are incredibly short, or maybe your emails are full of funny pictures, right? Like, or maybe your emails are once a month instead of every week. Like there are things that there are aspects of these strategies that we can bend so that they are going to work for you and that you're actually going to want to show up and do them. And I love to share this picture. This was me at the very first workshop I ever hosted. No one came. And I was just sitting here taking a picture of myself being like, this went great. I like remember posting this on social media being like, what an amazing workshop. And then I like went home to my partner and I was like, no one came. I was all by myself in the coffee shop. So, this can be an uncomfortable process, but I think you probably know that already just by the very fact that you're a business owner. There are a lot of uncomfortable aspects of this journey we've chosen. You're really good at finding comfort in the uncomfortable. The fact that you're here, the fact that you have made it this far tells me that you know how to do this. And workshops and public speaking and showing up in spaces like this are no different. And these strategies only become more effective the more you do them and the more you make them yours, right? And so like, yeah, the first time no one showed up to the workshop, that never happened again, right? Like we can totally talk about the Rebecca. What if no one comes? How do we handle that? But like it never happened again, right? And it happened once. I learned from it. I figured out some other ways to get folks there. I realized people need to be asked way more times than you ever expect them to be asked. And then I also had workshops, like I've led workshops like this on Zoom with one human. That is more awkward than no one showing. I assure you, when you are trying to like speak to a crowd and you have a single individual receiving your information is a very different experience. But we have all these like awkward little steps along the way before we get to finding, that groove and that flow state for us. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean like that you messed anything up. It doesn't mean that this isn't necessarily the strategy for you. It just means we got to keep trying a couple of times. So let's dive in. The first thing I want to talk about, I find this is really helpful because I think sometimes we maybe have actually never heard this before in business. And it's like, I think one of the most important parts of marketing. At all times when you're marketing, there are two different humans that you are potentially talking to. The first are people who know you, right? And so this could be, and we can like argue the level of intimacy that they know you, but these folks have met you in some capacity, whether it's they're following on your Instagram, or they've seen you at a workshop, or they've actually worked with you one-on-one, or for some of us, like it's your aunt on your Facebook page, or it's, like these folks know you in some capacity, right? The other group of people are people who have never interacted with you yet. Like for me, this is Jenny today. I have never met Jenny before, right? This is a brand new relationship. At all times when you're doing marketing, you are talking to one of these two people. You're talking to folks you know, or you're talking to folks you don't know. Where it gets a little tricky is the things I would say to Naraya, who is a dear friend of mine, and I have had many, many, many interactions with, are going to be different than the things I'm going to say to Jenny, right? Who I have just met today for the very first time. This is true in marketing, right? The way we're going to talk to people we don't know is different than the way we're going to talk to people that we do know. And when you're thinking about these workshops, I find it to be, or thinking about building a workshop or webinar, it's really useful if you think about who are you actually trying to reach? Are you trying to reach a bunch of people that you've never met before? Or are you trying to reach people that know you a little bit and you're trying to kind of get them that next step to being a paid client or customer? Or are you actually genuinely trying to reach both folks, right? There are certain points where we're like, ew, I kind of need both. My suggestion is to try to only talk to one of these groups at a time. If you try to talk to both of them at the same time, your narrative tends to kind of fall flat. You're either not intimate enough for the folks that do know you, or you're talking over their head for the folks that don't know you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you will always, no matter what you do and how specific you try to be with this, you're going to get both of these people at workshops and webinars. And that's totally fine. We're not going to worry about that. But I do want you to be intentional when you're creating content. Think about the person you're talking to. And as we start to dive into like what that workshop is actually going to be about, this really matters, right? So if I'm talking to folks who have like literally just decided to start a business, like in the last month, they've decided they want to be a business owner, versus folks who have been running a business for 5 years, this is a really different, right? This is a really different webinar. These are really different. This is very different content. And so I want to just be thinking about that. Like, where are they in the stage of their journey? How well do they know me? How much do I need to like build trust, right? If I have a room full of Narayas, I don't need to give them a lot of context for who I am. I don't necessarily need to like prove my worth a whole bunch. Versus if I have a whole room full of Jennies, these folks are like, I don't know who you are. Like, what? How am I supposed to trust you, right? Like, I got to build a relationship first. And so I think that's helpful when you're thinking about starting this process. Who are the folks you're really trying to attract? And if you're like, I don't know, tell me, who am I trying to attract? I would first think about, if you have an audience, if you have even like a small audience, and I mean 50 humans that you could reach out to, I would encourage you to start with that group of folks you know and try to get them moving into this paid client, paid customer relationship before you go out and seek folks you don't know. It's kind of like, Michelle, hopefully you'll appreciate this. It's like, max out your house's potential before you start building additions, right? Like, let's use the floor plan we already have before we try to build even bigger. But if you're like, I literally have no one, I have no one to sell to, then yeah, we're reaching out to some folks we don't know yet, right? We're going to start there. I'm going to pause. That was a lot of talking. Any questions about that? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, Emily. So,
Okay.
So starting with the people that I know from networking, from professional networking, makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Yep.
And kind of intuitively, it feels like the right place to start.
Yep. And what will happen is like, eventually I will max out the floor plan of my house, right? Like if I keep growing, I will eventually max out that floor plan, and I do need to build an addition, and that's totally okay. But I think sometimes we get a little scared of the level of intimacy that's going to be required to like take the person we know to like all the way to a paid client relationship. Like that can be a little bit scary. And also we're receiving a lot of messaging that like audience growth is the number one, and you just like have to have these huge audiences. And that's not true, right? Like we can get a lot done with a small intimate group. Look at us here. We have a small intimate group here, and we're moving along just fine, right? So I like to kind of like max out the potential you have before we start to move on to something else. And eventually, if you have maxed out that potential or you're starting from scratch, yeah, we are reaching out to new folks. Totally. So like I mentioned, the upside here is workshops and webinars will allow you to reach both of these folks very effectively. We can use this strategy in either bucket of human. I just want you to be thinking about which bucket that is as we move forward. So we've talked about our goals. We've talked about our strengths a little bit. We've talked about the 2 types of humans that we're thinking about reaching. And so now what I want to do is dive into, there are 3 different strategies we're going to be looking at, or kind of 3 different steps along the way to building this workshop. So The first thing we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to take out either a piece of paper, or you can open up a Google Doc, whatever's your jam, for doing a little brainstorming. But our first step is figuring out, what is it you actually are interested in teaching, right? What do people ask you about? This can feel, for some of us, a little bit like endless possibility-ish land, where we're like, oh my God, I can think of dozens of things. And then on the flip side, I have folks who are like, I think of nothing. I don't know what to talk about. But my hope is to give us about 5 minutes and to do a little brainstorming here. And we're just going to draft up a list of workshop ideas. You have 2 qualifiers for the things you put on your list. They need to feel, your topics, your titles need to feel fun to you, and they need to feel easy to teach. And when I say easy, I don't mean that it's like not a challenging topic or there aren't elements of it that would be difficult. More that like it's an easy yes. You're like, I would feel excited to do that. That sounds cool, right? I do not want you to pick a topic that you're like, this is what my thesis was on, and I guess I could teach this. No, that's not easy. That's hard, right? Like that's resistance we're describing. Okay, so grab a notebook or a Google Doc. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer. And I've got a couple of questions here for you to consider if you're like, I need a little prompting for my workshop ideas. There are some here. And if you're like, I'm already writing, stop talking, Emily, continue writing. And I will give you 5 minutes. And if you have questions, just let me know. Unmute yourself and ask away.
Emily, 2 seconds to help me brainstorm. There are all different kinds of certifications that people can get for their home landscape, for pollinators, for wildlife. And I'd love to take people through the process of figuring out which one they could do for their particular home landscape. The fun idea that comes to mind is win the prize, but it's not exactly that. It's not a prize. It's a certification, but that's not a fun word. Can you think of a title that would, it's the notion of people feeling, hey, look what I did, in a very wonderful way that I'd like to help them get to win the prize. Maybe it'll strike us. If something strikes you later, please let me know.
So it would be describe the workshop again.
The workshop would be taking them through the several different, Fish and Wildlife has a certification. The Pollinator Powerhouse has a certification where you get a little medal and it says that you did all these wonderful things at your home landscape.
So you're making me think of, those like ridiculous quizzes that are like, what Disney princess are you?
Oh, interesting.
I like something like that. Like
okay.
What,
I'll work with
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah. And give you 1 more minute. All right. If you're still writing, continue writing. Just ignore me for a second. And if you're done, great. I just want to give a little description. No worries, Catherine. Absolutely. I'm glad you can make it for the first part, and the replay should come out soon. I just wanted to give a little bit more context for this last idea. This is a little bit more advanced of a strategy, but I think it's fun to just kind of put it out there, and so you can start percolating and thinking about it. This is especially for the folks that are thinking about generating leads through webinars. One strategy is to think about so I'm actually going to go like this real quick, because I think give me 1 second. All right, can you see my whiteboard? Yep. Okay. All right. So if you think about, let's say inside these brackets, I'm amazing at drawing, I know, thank you. Inside these brackets is your client journey. Okay. And so client starts here and client leaves here. Okay. So let's say Naraya is my client, and Naraya comes to me. My client journey is essentially like Naraya comes to me with no email list, no key messages set, but that she's got a business built, and she's like, I really want to get into email marketing. I really want to nail down, like, what is it I write about? And like, how do I get better at writing and get this email marketing working? When she leaves working with me, she has a fully set up email list running. She's got an awesome lead magnet that's bringing folks into that email list. She's emailing weekly, and she knows exactly what she's emailing about, right? So that's like my client journey, where she comes to me and where she leaves from me. Webinar and workshops, if you can figure out what is right here before your client starts whatever this paid experience is with you, if you can figure out what is here for them, that is an awesome webinar or workshop title. Because what happens is you get them primed here, and you're like, here's all the things you're working on. So like for Naraya, for an example here might be like I would ask myself, why hasn't Naraya done this on her own? Why didn't Naraya like build her own email list? Why did she need me? Right. And so I could host a workshop on, like time management for marketing, right? Maybe Naraya's like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to sit down and write emails. That's just way out of I'm too busy. Or maybe it's a workshop on like brainstorming, like email type, like subjects, right? Of like what she should be writing about. Or maybe it's Naraya's like, I hate writing, right? Like writing sucks. And so I've got a workshop on like email marketing for people who hate writing, right? Like maybe that's my workshop. I'm trying to get to Naraya before the client journey, so that when I'm helping Naraya here, Naraya's like, oh, okay, I feel like maybe I can do this. What's next? Right. And I'm like, oh, since you're asking, here's what's next. It's this whole client journey that we're going to go on. Does that make sense? It's kind of like you're like finding the person right before they're ready to do something with you. Okay. So that's a little bit more advanced. If you're like, just this whole concept is challenging, don't worry too much about that, and just stick with the fun and easy qualifiers, right? What feels fun, what feels easy, and pick a workshop that's in that realm. Any questions on that?
Yes. So
yeah, go for it.
You're on the one hand, you're letting us generate our own ideas of what's fun. But on the second, I think what you've just explained is, hey, yeah, but what do they need? What do they want? What is going to attract them to what you're offering. And I don't think the two live independently, because that's one of my challenges is I love native plants and I feel so committed to it, but people do love their grass, and grass is very straightforward to take care of. So oftentimes what I want to offer, yeah. So I think the two are a little bit more connected than what you're showing it to be. Thank you.
So yeah, no, I think that's a really great question. And so for me, if I was like, okay, I'm Michelle, I really want to teach people about native plants, and secretly I hate grass. Just kidding. I don't know, maybe you do, but I personally am like, grass is useless and we should just yeah, see. So first of all, I would argue your people are out there, because I'm one of them right here. Like, hell yeah, tell me about native plants and tell me what I should be doing. But I would also argue a workshop that would like be prior to the native plant loving human journey, right? Prior to that could be a workshop on like alternatives to grass. Sick of mowing your lawn, sick of planting grass seeds, sick of grass seed bags are insanely expensive. Like the local stuff here, I was like, holy moly, that's expensive. So maybe a workshop is on like, did you know you didn't even have to have grass? Right? So like there's some elements that are coming before I learn that I love native plants and that I don't have to have grass all over my yard. Like, what's that step before that? Right? And maybe it's a frustration of like, I'm sick of mowing, or maybe it's like grass doesn't even grow well here in this spot, or like we can brainstorm. I think there is a way that these two go together. And the reason I ask you to start with what's fun and what's easy is if you pick something that's solely based on what you think your client wants and it's not in the fun and easy bucket for you, I guarantee it will be gone within a year. Like you will not hold on to it. It's just not going to fill your cup. So we got to start with what you want to be teaching, and then like figure out, how does this apply to the people we really want to be working with? Yeah. And I'll also add, Michelle, it's hard when you are in an industry or in a space that is, I deal with this constantly. When you're like on the radical end of the spectrum, I'll just say it that way, it's hard, right? There's less humans all the way over here on this radical end. And I deal with that all the time. And it can be a lonely space, but we are out there. And there are more radical humans that want native plants and don't want grass. I guarantee it. I'm like, we can't possibly be alone. We're not that unique. It's just not possible. Okay, let me grab my, let's see. And there we go. Let's come back over here. All right, so I'll just say here to you, was anyone struggling? Is anyone like, I came up with nothing, I have no ideas? Or maybe not that dramatic, but like you felt like this was hard?
I just take longer to do everything.
Yeah. Oh no, that's okay. Yeah, I know. These workshops are hard because it's like, I'm trying to get you to like condense a day's work into 15 minutes, which is literally impossible. So I really appreciate that. Do you feel like it's a question you can come back to and make space for?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it actually, the course, the certification I'm taking also, right now we are working on marketing.
Cool.
And
timely.
Yes. So it's all kind of melding together. So it's all kind of working in there. I just wanted to say, what a perfect example of this is the teacher has an incredible website, an incredible bank of workshops. But the thing that she introduces people through is this little 5-day course that's called Getting Bigger Than What's Bugging You. And it's, got that light kind of, it's bugging you. It's not like this huge thing in your life, but it is the entry point. So something like that, is, I'm trying to cook up something like that without being plagiarized. Stealing it.
I know that feeling. I used to run, and it's still a lead magnet I have up on my website, is like it's a 5 days to take back your time challenge, right? And because I found, for me, when I was looking at my client journey, the biggest pain point for folks was time. They were like, I don't have enough time to work on my business. I'm so busy in it, trying to keep it alive, that I don't have any time to like work on it and think about expanding it. And so I spent 5 days with folks, and we had like 200 people signed up for the challenge. It was awesome. And we all together like figured out how to take back some of our time, right? Because it is possible. Like we're choosing where we spend our time a lot of the time, right? There are some things that we absolutely have to do. But then there are a lot of things that like we do because we think we have to, or because someone's asked us to do, or and aren't necessarily aligned with where we want to be spending time anymore. And so, yeah, I love that you're thinking about kind of like, what is that a little bit more lighthearted and easy, right? We want it to be easy. We want it to be easily approachable, something people can come into pretty easily. Yeah. If you do get stuck, or some of you, I'm sure, are verbal processors, whereas others are internal processors. I'm definitely, if you can't tell, a verbal processor. And so talking through with someone is usually my go-to. That's really helpful. So finding somebody, especially if you can talk to someone who would potentially buy your services, right? Like, even if it's just a friend and you're not actually trying to sell to them specifically, but they're a good replica of like who you would want to sell to, talking to them of like, if I'm Michelle, I'm like talking to my buddy who also loves native plants. And I'm like, what kind of workshop would you sign up for? Right? Like what's great is if you can find someone who's like maybe a year behind you in your journey of like evolution of learning. So someone who's just getting started out is really helpful. And then you can also, sometimes looking online and seeing what other people are offering in your industry can be helpful too. That can sometimes like trigger some ideas. It can also trigger a lot of imposter syndrome and comparison. So just tread lightly there. I usually tend to just kind of keep my blinders on. Okay, so step 2, we're going to build an outline. So what I want you to do, and this is, kind of to Burr's comment, this is more just a practice in trying this out. You will need to come back to these titles and this outline to like fully flesh something out, but I want to give you an idea of what this could look like. So what I'd like you to do is pick one of the titles you came up with, and we're going to draft an outline for it. Okay. And so the way I like to do workshops and webinars is similar to how you learned how to write an essay, assuming you learned how to write an essay in high school. And you have the introduction, you have your 3 supporting paragraphs or arguments, and then you have a conclusion. Workshops and webinars are very similar. So it's like we have an introduction. You saw at the beginning, you all introduced yourself. I introduced myself. I prefaced the conversation with, I gave some context to what we would be doing. And now we're on step 2 of 3 steps that we're learning. And then there will be some conclusion and we'll end, right? You'll see this little note here in red. This can be extended up to 5 steps if needed. However, just be mindful, you're looking at a really long workshop if you're getting up to 5 steps. I struggle to keep 3 steps under 90 minutes. And that seems to be pretty normal across the board. So if you are trying to do 5, you're looking at more of like a 2 to 3 hour workshop, in which case you would want to plan for a break halfway through. I find 90 minutes is the longest any of us can actually like sit still and pay attention before we need a little time out. So this is what I want you to draft out on your piece of paper or Google Doc, whatever you've got up. I want you can just put here if you want introductions. You don't need to like flesh this out at all. Really what I want you to flesh out are these 3 talking points. So if I'm me, I'm just going to choose me as an example. If I'm me and I'm like, I'm going to teach a workshop on email marketing, I'm probably, my 3 talking points just off the top of my head would probably be how to use a conversational tone in writing, right? Like I think most people write like a robot, and we want to stop doing that because nobody likes reading words from a robot. They want to read words from a human. So I'm talking about that. I'm probably talking about maybe like the tech setup, because that's a big part for a lot of people where they struggle. And then I'm probably talking about how to get people on the email list, right? Like those are the three things that I'm like, if you get those three, you're probably going to have a decent newsletter going. And like, that's a really good starting place. Okay. Does that feel clear? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give us 5 minutes. If you have questions, if you get stuck, feel free to ask away. And so again, your main focus here are these 3 talking points. I want you to kind of flesh out in a sentence or two, what are those talking points? All right, I'll give us 1 more minute. All right. How do we do with that? At least get some ideas going. Yeah. Okay. Give us something to come back to. Cool. A couple of things. First, I just wanted to, Michelle, I wanted to make sure you saw my comment in the chat. Your comment around grass and like everybody wants to grow grass. Reminds me a lot of how I used to feel about speaking about capitalism. I'd be like, everybody just wants to make money. Nobody's going to want to hear me talk about, you know, a post-capitalist future. And turns out that I was wrong. Very, very, very wrong. Lots and lots and lots of people wanted to hear about that. And also the more I got confident just saying like, no, actually, this is like a viable idea and people want to hear about it and I'm going to keep talking about it, the more validity it gave the idea, right? Like I was actually speaking truth into the idea just by proclaiming it. And so I think the same is for you. It's like we can be a little afraid sometimes of like getting up on our soapbox and being like, actually, grass is dumb. None of y'all should be growing grass. Like, and that can feel scary, but the more we do that, like the more true it becomes, right? And then the more people are like, oh yeah, that's an interesting, I hadn't even thought about that. Why do I grow grass, right? And so, you know, just a little nudge to like, you know what you're talking about. And it's okay to get on your soapbox. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things to consider when you're working on your 3 main talking points or your like 3 arguments or whatever you want to call them, is the 2 biggest things I like to focus on the most are how does this change things, right? So like, I think a lot of the time it's really helpful when we paint a picture of like, if you do this thing, here is what you may expect to have happen, right? Like if we can start to paint that futuristic picture for folks in the workshop of like, if you start doing email marketing here, you know, it has a 4x return on investment compared to social media. You can expect 4 times the amount of revenue to be happening as a result of your efforts versus showing up on Instagram. Like if we can start to do that for folks, right? We can show them that picture. It's easier and helpful for them to be able to kind of latch onto it. The other thing I really want to encourage you, and Jenny touched on this of like storytelling and the power of storytelling, is sharing proof, right? So I really want to show you that the things I'm saying are true versus telling you that the things I'm saying are true. And I want to show you so that you can believe on your own versus me trying to quote, like convince you of things, right? And I can do that by sharing social proof. I can do that through storytelling. I can do that through sharing data. I can give you evidence for these things versus trying to get you to just take my word for it. And I would say that storytelling is incredibly impactful. You know, just sharing how, you know, I can tell a story about Brianna and the first newsletter she sent out and the amazing, overwhelming welcome that she received from the people that received that newsletter and how now she looks forward to writing her newsletter every single week. Like that's literally like, she loves that aspect of business now and has carved out the time for that, you know? And I can do that in a way that like, you don't have to just take my word for it. You can you're more basing your judgment on what I'm showing you. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So my biggest suggestion, and I love these. Awesome. Thank you for putting these in the chat. Feel free to keep putting them in here. All of your blah, blah, outlines for your workshops. These look awesome. And I'm excited to have these here. My biggest suggestion, and you'll see I try very hard to do this on my own and in my own workshops, is to talk less. And this seems counterintuitive. And when we get nervous, we often tend to talk more and we'll just like bulldoze through our content if we're feeling really nervous. I've definitely been there. but the more you can ask questions, especially I have found the more you can start off the workshop with other people talking and getting people to really connect to each other in the group, but also connect to you as the speaker, the more successful the workshop is going to be. I found this was like, I just tested this over the last year. In the last year, started to ask people to introduce themselves at the beginning of workshops. And I have found, as a result of doing that, the vast majority, and this is no shade to anyone that turns their camera off, but the vast majority of people keep their camera on when I do that, because they feel a connection, right? Like they feel a sense of intimacy and responsibility and like connection to what's happening. And so it gives an element of feeling like in person that can be kind of hard to replicate online. And I don't know about you all, but like, it's not a ton of fun to like speak to just a screen of cameras turned off, right? Like if it's everyone, that can be challenging. And we want, we want to be connecting with people. We want to see people's faces. We want to know that like people are listening. And so just asking more questions, getting people to unmute themselves, getting people to converse, to chat in the chat box. I try to always read the chat box out loud. That helps too with just kind of getting people to connect and talk to each other more. It's also really helpful for people that are watching the recording because they can't see the chat. And so just knowing that like there is more dialogue happening in there too. Okay. I want to give us some space to ask some questions and dive into like some specifics on your business. But like I said, yeah, just giving folks the opportunity to share from personal experience goes a really long way in a workshop. So asking people, what's the part you hate most about writing emails, right? And then like, wait, sit back, be quiet, and wait for people to answer. Oh, look, I had that example right here. So I'm going to share with you 2 of my slide decks. I've never done this before, and I'm just going to trust that you're going to be rad humans and not disperse these out into the internet. But I'm just going to set them to view only, and you'll just have these slide decks. So hopefully this is useful to you moving forward as you start to build out your own decks. The way I approach this, you'll see like the title here on these title slides for both of these look exactly the same, except for the title's different and the picture's different. I have one deck that I've built and I just use that same deck. I just make a copy of it and I make a new deck. And that's helpful because I don't want to be building a new deck out in Canva every single time I have to run a workshop. It also builds like brand consistency. Yeah, totally happy. P. Roberts, what's your first name, dear friend? Just because I like asking people their name. Happy to recommend some email marketing platform to you. So the difference between these 2 decks, just so you know, as you, and I realize I'm approaching time quickly, so I apologize about that. But the difference between these 2 decks, I just want to show you real quick here. This one, Felicia, I hope I said that right. Thank you, Felicia. I'll share with you. So this deck is enormous. First of all, there's 75 slides. This is a true webinar deck. So this is like, I have a bunch of people here that I do not know that are coming to learn something specific. So this one was on 3 simple ways to grow an anti-capitalist business and still make money. That was the title. And so I'm going through 3 specific things. And then you'll see from slide 42 to 75, this is all selling. This is all selling, 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 selling. So if that is something you're interested in doing, if you're interested in understanding kind of the mechanics behind that, I think it's pretty intuitive to go through these slides and be able to see what I'm doing. I just wanted you to have this because I think it's useful to just, I don't think you should have to like stare at a blank Google sheet ever in your life if you don't have to. That's my role, my job here. So you can check these out. The other one is more of a true workshop. So this is like on digital products. There's no selling in this at all. And so I'll give you this one too, in case you're like, I'm not really interested in doing any sales. I just want to like have a traditional workshop vibe. So I'll send you this slide deck as well. And then let's come back over here. I know, right? They're good workshops. The digital products one is coming up in December, so you will be able to actually take that one, which will be great. Okay, so we didn't get to dive into this part of like getting the folks to the actual workshop, and I'm amazed that we got to time already, but we've got a couple of minutes. So I just wanted to talk to you about, these are the 4 strategies I use for getting folks to your workshop. And like I said at the beginning, 2 of them are, you know, relying on technology, and then 2 of them don't. And so I think all 4 are really great, but if you are actively seeking something that doesn't use social media, that's totally fine. And so what I'll do here, I'm created a Google Doc with all the links I'm showing you right now. So I'll just send that to you with the replay. So don't worry too much about trying to like find all these things right now. This is a social media post that's announcing a workshop to just give you an idea of how I do that. Similar to Jenny's comment around storytelling, I strongly encourage, like you see, I don't even mention the workshop until halfway down in this post. And I don't know what these little squares are. That is not on purpose. I'm not sure why it's formatting that way right now. But it's a lot of storytelling, right? So using imagery, stories, I'm talking a lot about, you know, thinking about the workshop itself and like, what is it you're really trying to get across? What are you trying to help people understand? And not leading right out the gate with like, sign up for my workshop, right? We kind of want to lead with like, just like if you were having a regular relationship out in the real world, right? You don't like meet your friend for coffee and say like, can you give me some money? Right? Like you start with like, hi, how are you? And like, what's going on and what's new, right? Like we have some relationship building to do first before we ask for things. So just using that there as well. I'll send you, this is an email announcement announcing a workshop. So in case you're curious around how to do that in email marketing, I think this is a really good template of using storytelling. I was talking about how I was in the Adirondacks for a week and I wasn't on social media all week and how happy I was and how much I hate social media. And then, oh, guess what? Here's this workshop on marketing without social media. And so just kind of weaving in my own personal experiences into the content you're teaching. So I'll send you this email. And then these are some kind of funky options that you might not have seen before. But is anyone familiar with Loom? Loom? Yeah, cool. Okay. So you can take videos. I'll send you this link. This is a 46-second video. I couldn't find one that was specifically to inviting someone to a workshop because it's been years since I've used this strategy, but this is one inviting someone to do coaching with me. And so I thought it's still a good model of like how I would approach this strategy, but essentially you can send, if you have, you know, I don't know, maybe 15 intimate contacts, like people that you would just email in your Gmail or your Outlook or whatever, that you're like, I'm doing this workshop. I'd really like to have you come. Like, here's what it's about. You want these to be really, really short. So like 90 seconds would be the max you would want this movie to be. And you're embedding this in the email. And so it's pretty cute how it shows up. It like pops up like a little pre-populated picture in the email. If you have questions about this, you feel free to email me. I'm happy to send you a little tutorial on how to do it. But I've had a lot of success with this. People are like, oh my God, this was so cool. Like it was just like an email just for me. And it was like a video just for me. And it can just kind of break up the monotony of endless emails in your inbox that are really easy to ignore. So this is a fun way to do some direct outreach if you're like, I'm really just starting from scratch. And then the last strategy This is the one I use probably the most often. This is technically called like joint venture workshops, or JV workshops. You'll also see JV webinars. But what you're doing is you're taking your content and your material and you're showing up in front of someone else's audience, right? So some of you may be on my email list, but most of you are here because of CWE, right? Like you came through CWE's channel, not through my own. Now you might be on my email list if you decide to be there, which is great. And if you don't, that's fine too. But this is one of my favorite ways to either grow your email list or just like hand off the burden of marketing. Honestly, is like, give it to someone else to do that, like has a team and does these kinds of things. So figuring out, like Michelle, maybe you partner with the Parks and Rec, or you, right? Like you find people that have similar interests, that you're not a direct competitor. And honestly, like for CWE, this is so helpful because like I'm building all the content, right? Like they're not having to host their own workshops. They just are paying a facilitator to bring content to their audience. So it works for both of us. I don't have to build the audience. They don't have to build the content. We just can share. So if you were to walk away today with only doing one of these things, I would strongly suggest it be this. This is by far like the best bang for your buck, especially when you're starting out. I also tend to do this one a lot when I'm low bandwidth. Like if I just don't have a lot of time or a lot of energy, I will do these JV workshops because I don't have to do any prep. I don't have to like worry about getting folks to sign up for the workshop. They're doing that work. If I have time to blast it to the couple of thousand people on my email list, awesome. But if I don't, it's like not the end of the world, right? So that would be my last suggestion. And these you can do paid or free, right? So they can be done either way. Awesome if you can get paid for them though. Definitely like ask if you can. But if you can't, then just be really picky about like how you get access to the emails and stuff like that so that you can at least like be building some equity that way. So I would say there's really like I said at the beginning, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I think the biggest factor is persistence, is like doing it over and over and over again, right? And kind of just like ripping that Band-Aid and get going. Like try a workshop. If no one comes, try another one. If one person comes, try another one. If 50 people come, try another one, right? Like I've had workshops with hundreds of people in them. I've had workshops with 0 people, with 1 person, and I've messed up all along that spectrum, right? Like I've done all sorts of silly things all in between. But overall, like it gets better each time, right? I get more and more equipped to doing it. I haven't done one of these in almost 2 months, and I was totally nervous this morning. I was like, oh, I have to talk in front of people. I haven't done this in a while. Right. So it's like, the nerves are there, but it's like any muscle. The more you're using it, the stronger it gets and the more normal it feels to be doing it. So I want to, I'm happy to hang out if you guys have questions. I just wanted to make sure you got this in case, if you are in Vermont, there's some pretty cool opportunities coming up. There is, I am VSAC approved, my business is, so you can get a VSAC grant to work with me this fall and winter. That's a $2,500 grant that you would apply for. If you have questions about that or you want to try to apply for it, just let me know. You can just email me. I don't know if I have my email on the next slide here. There's also a, I cannot remember this acronym, but CVEDC has a $4,000 grant that will be coming out this fall. I think it should come out in November. The application should go live. I just emailed them again, asking if they have a date yet. So if you are on my email list, I will absolutely keep folks apprised of this because this is a really cool opportunity. They are prioritizing women, BIPOC, non-binary, young Vermonters, which I don't totally know what that is, seniors, veterans, and justice-oriented businesses. So like social justice, environmental justice, like any justice-oriented business, they're going to be prioritizing those applications over any others. You can do a lot of different things with this $4,000 grant. I will be offering a very specific email marketing package. So we will write probably up to 10 emails together that will be a sequence that you'll have for all new people coming into your orbit. We'll also work on building you a lead magnet. All of this will also include like getting your website tip-top shape and making sure like all of those tech pieces are working well. So I'll be like editing your emails, making sure they're all solid. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to do it. And then these are all the upcoming webinars that I'll be teaching from now until the end of this year. These AIDTR ones are, am I doing this right? So it's just an hour. You can come and you can ask any question, and it's just an open coaching call. So you can ask that. Then we have one on how much should I charge? We have one on time management, and we want to one on digital products and intellectual property. So those are the dates of all those. You can find all of them on CWE's website and sign up for any of them. They are sliding scale, and the sliding scale starts at 0. Any question about those? I know I flew through that.
I can
Cool.
just clarify that CVEDC is
Yes.
Central Vermont Economic
Vermont
Development
Economic
Corporation,
Development
because I work for Addison County Economic Development Corporation. So
There you go. I was like, I don't remember it off the top of my head fast enough.
too many acronyms.
It's so many. But yeah, that one will be neat. Do you know when it comes out?
I know that they're still putting together, like getting the navigators trained and getting the platform set up. So
I know my application to be a provider was accepted. So like that's all set up, but
first things first. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so
Cool.
glad they're part of it. I'm excited.
Yeah. So those will all be there. And then these are all the places you can find me. If you have any questions, you can email me at emily@emilyeley.com. If you would like to keep up to date on things like these workshops and the grants as they roll out, you can also join my newsletter right here. That's the easiest way to just keep apprised of these things. But you can also always find it on my website too. And I had a couple people ask questions that I just wanted to answer to, if you guys are cool. So email marketing, my suggestion is ConvertKit. That's probably my favorite. If I was to just buy a standalone email management provider, it would be ConvertKit. I've heard really good things about Flowdesk as well. But yeah, I would absolutely go with ConvertKit any day. I'm not currently on it, but that's only because all of my stuff is packaged into one place. And then Rebecca, you asked if no one comes. What if no one comes to your workshop? You have a couple of different options. Option one is what I did, which was I like totally faked it. And I was like, this was amazing. It was so much fun getting to meet everyone. And I like recapped my 3 talking points. And I did like, made kind of a little bit of a show of it on Instagram. That was many, many years ago. That's option one. You can do that. You can just kind of like fake it till you make it vibe. Option 2 is to just like not say anything and try again, right? Like just don't mention it and post another one. You can either just totally just like not acknowledge that the other one passed, or you can make an acknowledgement of it. It's really kind of whatever is going to feel best for you. Like what's going to help you feel most authentic showing up again is what I care about. I think at the time of that workshop, I was like, I needed that like positive energy running in order to get me to try again. And so that worked for me at that time. Would I do it again? I don't know. I'd have to kind of feel that out next time through. I think probably now with the confidence I've gained, I'd probably be more honest and be like, absolutely no one came. Let's try this again. Here's another opportunity, right? Like I'd probably make a joke of it at this stage in my life, but I think there's no wrong answer. Nobody's going to judge you for like telling a white lie about it being amazing and trying again. I really, and if they are judging you, tell them to go away.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion. And then I think those were all like the specific questions I wrote down. Anything coming up for you all? Questions?
I did have another question.
Yeah, go for it.
And so when you're just starting out doing webinars, do you suggest starting
Mhm.
out just having them for free? And then if you get into
Mm,
specific topics, having those
yeah.
maybe be sliding scale, but
Yep. No, it's a
okay.
great question. I think it's depends on what your goals are. So if your goal is to get as many humans, like especially if you're like, I want as many new humans in the door as humanly possible, because my real goal is to turn those humans into paying clients,
Yeah.
I would lower the barrier to entry and either make it free or make it donation. I find sometimes with donation, people can get a little weird because they feel
Mm-hmm.
guilty not donating. And so then instead of just not paying any money, they just don't come, which I'm like, I'd rather you not pay any money and come than not come at all. Right. So I would say, I think like in a perfect marketing world, I would start with it free, knowing that you're trying to drive this towards paid clients. That being said,
Okay.
if you're like, I can't afford to be offering free services, that's totally legit. And so I would
Mhm.
make it a price point that feels like a really easy yes. And I also, there is something to be said with like when you attach a price point, people tend to be more invested. They tend to like actually come if they registered. They tend to participate a little bit more. With free stuff, you can, like we technically had 20 people registered for today and
Yeah.
we had maybe 8 show, right?
Mhm.
So you get a significant drop off when it's free,
Okay.
which can be frustrating sometimes. Um, I would test it. Try some free,
Yeah.
try some paid, see what works, right? Like see, the other thing I've done is you'll see, I haven't hosted one in a while, but I used to host, they're called Spill the Tea. They were like tea talks. And so it was like an hour. It was kind of like these Am I Doing It Right sessions through CWE. It was like just a live hour to come and ask me any questions. So like if I was Michelle, it'd be like, come ask me all your native plant questions. Like I'm not bringing a slide deck. I'm not bringing any structure. I'm just going to sit here in front of the computer for an hour and I will literally just answer your questions. Those I often will do for free, as just like a way to get to meet me and get to know me and see if you like my energy. And then if it's like more of a really structured content, like this kind of workshop, that feels more easily justifiable to pay for. So you could try both of
Okay.
those. You can see how those feel.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, totally. Other questions?
And you use Canva for your slide decks.
I do. I use Canva for all my decks. Yep.
Mhm. I tried using that like, I don't know, 6 years ago. And like I said, I'm not a social media maven by any stretch. Is that something, I mean, I didn't find it that intuitive at the time, but maybe better now.
My guess would be that it has improved. The other thing I think some people get kind of bogged down by, like you'll see so like this slide is like not even like it's literally one bar of text and an image. Like I'm not fancy, right? Like so when you come over here to like the decks, I'm not messing around with these wild ass decks, right? Like I have very simple slides because to me, like it's just not I don't know, it's just not it's not valuable to me, I guess. And so I'm assuming it's not super valuable to you either for me to have an incredibly, like in a perfect world, sure, maybe I'd have like a designer build a deck for me, but like I think you're on mute. Yeah.
You really want people looking at you or each other. This is a place to reference, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's like and it's funny because I'm just going to grab this for y'all to sign on to the email list because I can't actually sign you up. You have to sign up. So I'm just going to throw this in the chat here. There you go. But yeah, no, to me, it's like anytime I want as few barriers to me being successful and actually doing shit as humanly possible. Right? Like, I don't need this to be another barrier to stopping me from doing the damn thing. So, like, which is why I recycle the decks, right? Like, I use the same decks over and over and over again. No, totally, Rebecca. It's like it creates consistency. And yeah, it works fine for me. Other questions?
Do you
Good.
use, I know
Yeah.
you mentioned, sorry, you mentioned
No, no.
ConvertKit for email marketing.
Yep.
Do you use anything for social media posting? Do you use Canva, or do you have something that
I don't
posts
post
to
on social
everything at the
media.
same time? Oh, you don't? Okay. Okay.
I'm not great at that. I have
It's hard.
it's a lot of work.
Consistency, yeah.
Yeah. I really like dedicate my time to my email. So I send about a weekly-ish newsletter. And occasionally, like I tried for a little while, like you'll see if you go on my Instagram, I tried for a while to like do Instagram. And I just really didn't enjoy it. And I found it really, really tiring. And I felt like it didn't produce the results I was really looking for. The only time I would go back to Instagram is if I went back to paid ads, which worked very, very well for me. So
Emily, on that
yeah.
topic though, unfortunately my business is all about color and texture. And so it is very Facebook and Instagram sensitive. Have you heard of a program you can recommend for the scheduling aspect?
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's lots of them.
I know, but is there one that is particularly financially?
I used to use Planoly. And then, yeah, I used to use Planoly. And then this is Planoly here.
Planoly.
And then
okay.
I've also used Plan with 2 N's.
Okay. All right. Because seasonally, I've got to get this crazy to keep generating new content every season. I've got to be able to reuse the old stuff, get it on a schedule. Thank you. And
to your point about like having lots of visual, like I put a lot of images in my email. Like that's where, and so
good point.
I'm putting a ton of images in there every single time. And this is the one I was going to forward you guys about. This is a workshop announcement in this email.
So is that a regular email? It almost looks like a newsletter.
It is. It's a newsletter. So this is through,
so what program is that?
Yeah. So I email through Kajabi because that's where my website is, my course platform, and my email management are all in Kajabi. But if I didn't have Kajabi, I would absolutely use ConvertKit, which is this is ConvertKit, and they're awesome. They're so great.
I'm on Acuity scheduling right now, and so much is on Acuity scheduling that to start a whole new thing, it's hard. I'm more tempted to shift over to Kajabi if I could, so that I could have everything in one place. Okay.
Yeah. Totally.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions for today? Cool. All right. Well, if you come up with anything, just email me. I'll put that right here. That's my email. Feel free to reach out anytime. Yeah. Any questions at all, reach out, and then I'll get you the replay and all the links that I shared today, probably like within a week.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you bet. It was so nice to meet you, Rebecca. Thanks for contributing. Yeah.
Take care.
Cool. All right. Bye-bye.